So, the next thing that we're going to talk about is, retrobrighting. What are sort of, I guess we could start, what are sort of our opinions about it, and then, some of the things we've retrobrighted recently. And I guess I'll start out by mentioning, if you watch my latest video, which I'm not sure if too many people have as of the time it's released, I did this. This is an Apple IIc. This is actually a late I think it's 1988 version, but I could be wrong. But this has the Alps keyboard and everything. I retrobrighted.
I have the 85.
Yeah, you have an earlier one. You have the earlier one. But haha, mine has a better keyboard. I at least get to flex on the keyboard, though. You get to flex with the 9-inch monitor and the printer and the older year. But, yeah, basically I retrobrighted this a few weeks ago. It looks pretty good, actually. I'm pretty impressed. I wasn't expecting it to look this good when I was done, because I was expecting it to take, weeks to get to this point, but it basically looks the original color at this point. But, I guess we could sort of bring up this topic and sort of talk about not only some of the things we've retrobrighted or plan to retrobrite, but methods of retrobrighting, and shit, we can even go into, our opinions on retrobrighting. So where do we want to start off here in this topic?
Okay, so my opinion on retrobrite is that I love it. I gotta be honest, I love it. People always complain about making the plastics brittle, but I'm sure that I'll have some really bad brittle plastics in the future, like your PowerBook, right? But I haven't had it before, and I've retrobrighted that Classic 2 over there. And it just turned out great, and I love that machine, and yeah, I actually did, and I plan on retrobrighting the 2C, the Apple Scribe printer, that SE over there. I want to retrobrite everything, because I simply don't like in yellow. I hate the color, I'm sorry, I don't like it, especially compared to a really white Macintosh Classic 2 next to it, which I love that machine. I mean, the yellow, some of them are almost, damn brown because they're so yellow, then, I don't like it, and I like, I like them in white. So, what's your opinion on the whole retrobrite thing?
Well, obviously, as you can tell, I'm pro retrobrite because I just spent 3 days retrobrighting this. But I want to address some of the anti-retrobriters sort of things that they bring up, and obviously there's the brittle plastics. The thing
you have different methods as well.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
The thing with the brittle plastics is it really depends on how you're doing it, what you're doing it on, and, mainly those two things. Starting with what you're doing it on, the brittle plastic doesn't as much have to do with the retrobrite as it does just have to do with the machine itself and what the plastic was made with. For example, if you're going to retrobrite like an LC500, which, by the way, don't, it will probably shatter when you even look at it, those were made with very cheap plastics. They were designed to be very cheap machines, and so the plastics haven't held up as well. But if you're doing something like a 2C, these are made with much earlier and much better plastics that do hold up. And so most likely, sitting it outside in, okay, here's the thing, too. They obviously had to sit in even more sunlight without any kind of liquid to rehydrate them for the majority of their lives to get to the point where they're yellow, as is. So just sitting them outside in a watery substance that's going to keep the plastic hydrated for 3 hours, depending on what kind of peroxide you use, most likely isn't going to do too much to making them brittle. I mean, I retrobrighted this LC and, or did I just call this an LC? This 2C. And, it's not any more brittle than it was before, and it's not a brittle machine. It's still flexible. It's going to be fine. And this I did for a long time compared to what some people do. I mean, I used 3% peroxide, so this took 3 days in 100-degree weather. Fahrenheit, of course. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius, but...
Isn't it to see made out of ABS plastic?
It's the ABS plastic, yeah.
I'm actually looking it up.
Yeah, it doesn't really brittle the plastics. Of course, I'm no chemist. I don't really know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm just saying words, hoping that something sounds intelligent or makes sense. But for the most part, I don't really feel like brittleness is the biggest concern. If you're doing it on something like this that's not already known to be brittle and have issues with that, I know plenty of people who retrobrite their 2Cs. People do it all the time. And I've not heard one complaint with this particular computer that it makes it yellow. Same goes for the Compact Max, but... Oh, wait, they're not behind me. They're over there. But if you're doing it on something for example... Oh, thank God they made the PowerBooks in gray, because if they made them in beige, then there would be no PowerBooks left if people retrobrighted them. Because if the plastic's already known to be brittle, then it's going to get... the retrobrighting's not going to help. I'm not sure how much it will really do, but it's not a good thing to do.
LC...
Yeah, well, the LCs, oh, you're talking about, like, the all-in ones, right? Or, like, the pizza box ones.
Wait, I'm not sure which ones are like more brittle, to be honest.
I don't know, I don't really think the pizza
You mean
boxes
like
are...
what? The all-in-ones? Don't you like fucking? Oh,
Like,
yeah, the
like the
all-in-ones. Yeah, those fucking.
575s. Yeah, like the
Yeah,
big 14
yeah,
inch thing.
the 575s. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I gotta admit, I think those are ugly.
I don't know,
I think they're ugly.
I honestly, have the complete opposite opinion.
Honestly, Macintosh TV, I don't like how it looks.
I love, like, the case design, but I just hate, I would never
It's
buy one.
ugly.
Yeah, here's the thing. I understand completely where you're coming from with that, because I actually, the LC575 is sort of weird. I initially thought, damn, that's an ugly ass computer. I hated it at first, but then for some reason I just started loving that case design. It's still sort of, it's like, I'm not really entirely sure what I think about it. I sort of like it, I sort of don't for some reasons, but generally I sort of...
I think that case design is actually called, I think that case design is actually, or what is it? I think that design language, yeah, Espresso.
Yeah, espresso.
I think it's Espresso. It started with, like, the Color Classic.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know where I generally like the LC575s, but they're not a computer I'd ever buy, mainly because of, like, the brittle plastics, and, that's sort of where I stand in those. I would love to get one, but it would have to be, like, picking it up from somebody.
They're cool, but it's not my first choice.
It's not
So-
mine either. Because, like, I've seen people get those shipped to them, and I remember there was this one thing on, like, r/vintage Apple recently where this guy got, like...
Oh,
He unboxed it. It was just, like, powder with, like, it was, like, this beigeish powdery and, like, stuff and, like, chunks of plastic, and then, like, a CRT and a motherboard. Oh, it was so sad. I felt so bad for that dude. But, don't ever ship those computers. They will explode if you look at them wrong. That and, like, the Performa 6000s. I don't know, Espresso, really, it's not my fave. If they did those LC575s in, like, a Snow White design, holy shit, I would be all over them. But, I mean, even, I still love those machines. But, like, if they did them like Snow White, it would be even better. But, I wish they kept going with that language longer. Espresso's fine. It's just sort of like, it's an acquired taste. You have to actually sort of, like, try to like those computers' designs, and even so, they're just kind of weird. Anyway.
well, Snow White design is, like, very boxy, though.
Yeah, that's
And,
what I
like, yeah, me too. Isn't the SE Snow White as well?
Yeah,
I think it is.
The SE is probably one of the most
Yeah.
classic examples of Snow White. This is actually the
Yeah.
first. Fun fact: the Apple IIc here.
Yeah, Apple IIc is the first Snow White.
Yeah, this is actually the first machine to be Snow White's here that I'm holding right here. So it has, like, all the grills and, like, all the sharp corners and stuff, the nice keyboard. But the Apple IIc is actually, this particular version of it is actually the only version to have this particular color. So, like, what you might notice is it's still a beigeish color, but it's supposed to be that way. It's not actually a platinum. That platinum was what they used on every other Snow White machine. But, I don't know. Back to Retrobrighting. So, I think what you were asking is, like, the LC pizza boxes, like what I have, the LC I have, those, some people say they're brittle, but I think most of those people just either are not being too careful with them or just don't know how to use or open them correctly, but they're not really that brittle if they're taken care of well. I feel like that's sort of out of the very brittle era, but once you get into, like, the 575s, the Performa 6000s, the PowerBooks, don't retrobrite them. Just leave them how they are, because the reality is you can probably pull it off, but it's just going to make the machines probably even worse than they already are, and those machines are already incredibly brittle. I mean, take it from the person who showed up, who had a box of plastic sand with a CRT show up at their front door. Yeah, don't do that. So the second thing I was going to say is some people will say that retrobrighting leaves streaks. That was a big concern too, that, like, all the people who are sort of against the retrobrighting sort of thing, they'll say that it makes the plastic streaked, or it leaves weird patterns, or just ruins the appearance. Well, honestly, that does happen. We've seen very famous examples like the Ape Guy's Osborne 1. That's that's where I think a lot of people come up with that notion, and a few other things. That does happen, and that really all comes down to...
You gotta submerge.
Yes, it really...
You gotta use the submerge technique.
How you're doing it, yeah. As Arno said, use the submerge technique. That's what I did with this Apple IIc. And, honestly, I feel like in most cases, if you're doing the submerged technique, it will basically look as good as it did before, but just lighter. Because the issue is if you use, like, the peroxide cream and shit that you can buy, like the cream developer or whatever that some people use for it, or even the stuff that you make, it leaves an uneven surface on that, and basically that means that some parts will be retrobrighted less, some more, and so then you'll get streaking, like what the Ape guy had with his scenario. But that doesn't typically happen if you submerge the plastic. Some plastics are just weird. There's so many different types of plastics that were used in computers that it's hard to really get ones that work perfectly with it, but generally you're safe if you go with the submerging method. And I know plenty of people who, I don't even think the 2Cs get really that, they don't really get too many weird patterns and streaks and stuff even when they do have the cream applied to them. Some machines do. Some machines are more sensitive to that. But generally if you submerge them, you're fine. And those are like probably the two main things that people bring up. Some people also mention like, shoot, I just had it. What was it?
Honestly, if you submerge it, you also have like more control over the whole thing because, well, at least that's what I think. Because if you have like the plastic wrap method, you have like a thicker layer on some parts and then less peroxide on some parts of the plastic, and
you have to, like,
it doesn't work that well.
Yeah, and you have to like
massage it around, but still, yeah.
So it's just generally a more time-consuming, a more involved, and more difficult process. The only really involved thing when it comes to retrobrighting some items with the submerging method, where you submerge it in liquid peroxide with water, is you have to worry about bubbles.
If you were using like,
with bubbles, usually.
Well, I was talking about moving it if you're like using one light source, the sun. But if you're like Logan here, which then you use the UV lights as well, then you don't really have to like spin it around. If you have something flat like an Apple IIc.
Yeah. I think I used the sun. I used the sun with the computer. I used the UV light briefly with the spacebar. The sun is so much more effective, and then you have the heat too that helps that. But I think I was going to mention bubbles. Those do tend to cause issues. It depends on what you're typically, if you're retrobrighting something big and large like an Apple IIc, what I did was I stuck like a small little brick inside the computer, so it just basically made it to where the bubbles couldn't lift it off. But you can also just get by that by just regularly shaking off the bubbles, wiping off the surface of the machine with your hands. And the spacebar did have a lot of issues with bubbles. Sometimes you can insert it to where you can get all the air bubbles, and sometimes you could submerge. Welcome to Logan's Encyclopedia, where I go in for 5 hours and leave Arno just sitting here with nothing to do. Anyway. Bubbles. Sometimes you can submerge the item to where like you can get rid of all the air bubbles and stuff, air pockets that form. That helps sometimes too. But just the general reaction causes bubbles too. But what were are there any other issues that you can actually talk at all this?
I'm not sure how much heat actually affects the process. The whole retrobright process while you're using the submerge technique, but I actually found that if I add some like hot water first, that it actually works better than just setting it in the sun with cold water and peroxide. So I usually give it like a little jump start with hot water, then I add peroxide, then I put the piece in, and it usually works better than with like cold water.
Yeah, I think I put some hot water too in with the Apple IIc when I was doing it, but I just left that out of the video because it was like. It maybe raised the temperature by like 5 degrees because I had so much water in there to submerge it. And I was already like, I think the inside of that container got up to like 120 degrees at some points. Okay, so, I think when I asked you, like, so any other, like, issues you think that people bring up that are common, like, problems and, like, concerns when it comes to retrobrighting, that you've heard of, maybe?
Well, yeah, again, of course, the streaking, but that's what that's why I use the submerge technique. I've been thinking about doing the whole plastic wrap thing, but I don't think I will actually. Like the submerge technique is just it's easy. I mean, the problem is with my compact Mac, it is indeed a little big to use like the submerge technique on. But what I do then is I just reuse the water and peroxide because I mean, it isn't as effective, but if you add some more peroxide, it'll usually work for like another couple of hours.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know what I mean, like I retrobrighted the case of my compact Mac, so like the back case. How would I say that? The
back case.
So yeah, I retrobrighted. I retrobrighted like the back of the case of my compact Mac, in the same water and peroxide as the front panel, and I gotta be honest, they're both just as white. So if you're using like a lot of water during like using the submerge technique, just reuse it and add some peroxide.
Yeah, well, I mean,
If you don't want to waste a lot of water, at least that's
what I did too when it came down. I was actually planning on using the same water for both the 2C and the SC, but then of course, like clockwork, the day after I stopped retrobrighting the 2C, the weather switched to frickin' 80 degrees compared to like 97, by the way. Like 80-degree weather with just like thunderstorms. It's been storming and frickin' storming and storming and storming and storming for like past 2 weeks, I think, probably. I don't even know how long it's been, but I know I retrobrighted my 2C at least probably 2 weeks ago now. And it's been, I don't think we've had too many like sunny days. It's just like been sunny the entire day since then. So that's kind of annoying because like I wanted to sort of do that and then do the video on the SC because I've been promising that I was going to do both of those, but at least I got the one out. So at least I'm not just full of nothing, you know, promising nothing. So I think that's about it for today. Well, that said, we got lots of cool stuff coming up next time, so be sure to click the subscribe button down below and the notification bell down below so that you can get notified when the next episode of Retro Tech Talk comes out. So, until then, thanks for joining me today, Arno, and we will see you guys all next week with another episode of the show. So, we're going to log off for now. See you guys all next time, and goodbye.